Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, distinguished guests, today we make history. Today we take one more giant step in a mission that will be recorded as one of the most important public health triumphs of this century. We continue this historic journey by enforcing a common sense regulation, a regulation that will protect young people by kicking Joe Camel out of their lives. This administration's leadership in improving children's health is just extraordinary. Today, infant mortality rates have reached a record low. Childhood immunization rates are at an all-time high. Teen birth rates and teen pregnancy rates are inching down. And our new Children's Health Initiative is dedicated to providing health insurance for millions of kids who don't have it now. Today, we continue that progress by standing with parents and businesses to save our children from the deadly grip of tobacco. This is an enormous public health victory for every child, for every parent, for every family in America. And like any important victory, it couldn't have happened without the persistence and leadership of a great team. It couldn't have happened without the advocates, old and young, many of whom are here today. It couldn't have happened without the passion of our FDA Commissioner, David Kessler. How fitting, on his last day, we would embark on a new beginning for our children. It's a new beginning that couldn't have happened without the leadership of President Clinton. Never before in history has a president had the courage and the commitment to take on the powerful tobacco lobby to protect our children. And of course, it never could have happened without our vice president, a leader who understands the pain that tobacco inflicts on families. A leader whose caring and commitment to this issue has moved us forward as a country. It's my great honor to introduce the Vice President of the United States, Al Gore.
You want to go back over that way? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much. And Secretary Shalala, thank you for your extraordinary leadership and tenacity and determination to see this through to its rightful conclusion. And I would also like to begin this morning by saying a very special thank you to our good friend David Kessler, who will leave the government next week, or this week, after 6 extraordinary years of service, 6 extraordinary years of vision and leadership, commitment, and determination. At a time when some have grown cynical about government, David Kessler has demonstrated that when we roll up our sleeves, work hard, and put the public interest first, important work gets done. I think it'd be appropriate to ask David Kessler to stand up and receive our thanks and recognition. And I'd like to acknowledge Paulette Kessler, because David was able to accomplish all he did because of your help and support and that of your children, Elise and Ben, and we want to thank you for all that you have done. I want to acknowledge all of the distinguished guests who are here, the leaders of some 24 public interest groups that have been involved in this issue. Distinguished members of Congress from both sides of the aisle, members of the President's team from throughout the administration. Allow me to acknowledge the head of the Civil Division in the Justice Department, Frank Hunger, and 2 people who've helped him, George Phillips and Gene Theroff, and it's been a long, hard fight on that side of this struggle as well. There are many people who have been a part of President Clinton's team. 6 months ago, when President Clinton announced the final FDA rules to protect our children from tobacco and announced the decision to move forward, he stepped up and did what no other president in the history of the United States of America had ever done before. He acted willfully and decisively to keep tobacco away from our children. As I've said on other occasions, it's not an accident that no other president was willing to take this step. The powerful forces arrayed against him are awesome, but he walked right through the fire. He took the issue head on. And now we're seeing the results. We're seeing the beginnings of a real change. For more than 30 years, our leading health experts have warned us about the dangers of tobacco. But even though they knew about their products' health risks, the addiction and devastation it causes, cigarette manufacturers continued to market their product generation after generation to our nation's young people. The average adult who is addicted to smoking today began smoking before he or she was 15 years old. One of the insights David Kessler armed us with was the understanding of this epidemic as a pediatric disease. Light bulbs clicked on when people realized, yeah, that's it. When children start to smoke in their young teens, they become addicted. And then lots and lots of them are killed by it later, usually later in their lives. When people start smoking later, after 20 or so, they have a much easier time stopping. And of course, the industry, any industry that loses 400,000 customers each year is faced with a very serious economic problem. And the steady release of internal memoranda showing a concentrated plan to market to children really all have to be understood in that context. Today, the first of the new FDA rules to stop this will take effect, and we intensify our battle on behalf of our nation's children. With 500,000 tobacco retailers and $1 billion in tobacco sales to minors each year, there's absolutely no question that we have a lot of work to do. So for those listening around the country, especially those who sell cigarettes, the message today is stay away from our children. Don't sell tobacco to our children. Don't participate in the activity which ends up getting children addicted to cigarettes. Just stop that. And if you won't do it on your own, you better do it now, because it's the law of the land. This whole movement has been driven not only by those who I've acknowledged and the leaders, but young people who have seen their friends start to smoke and who have become aware of how important it is for them to get involved in it. Some of them are standing right behind me here, and it's my great honor to introduce to you a young woman who's going to present to the President today, who is herself helping to lead the fight to protect our young people from the dangers of tobacco. She is the 1996 Youth Advocate of the Year for the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Ana Santiago.
First, I wanted to thank you, Mr. President and Vice President, for inviting me to be a part of this very special occasion. As youth advocate for the Campaign for Tobacco-Free Kids, I'm just really proud of the role I've played in helping other teens keep the Marlboro Man and other alluring images out of their lives. And thanks to the strong stand you've taken, Mr. President, against tobacco advertising to children, Millions of more kids each year will be spared premature deaths from tobacco-related illnesses. The FDA rule is the first meaningful national policy in history to prevent the tobacco industry from marketing its products to children. Your support of this historic rule took a lot of courage, Mr. President. On behalf of every kid in the country, I thank you. Tobacco use by teens in the U.S. has become an epidemic. Smoking among high school students is at a 17-year high. But today, we're taking a major step in reversing that trend. The FDA rule, taking effect today, will mean a happier and healthier future for generations to come. And now it is my great honor to introduce the person who has placed the health of kids over the welfare of Joe Camel, President Bill Clinton.
Thank you, Ana Santiago, for the power of your example and for that very fine introduction. I want to thank all the young people who are here, the advocates who are here, the members of Congress who are here who have championed this battle for so long, and especially I thank the Vice President and Secretary Shalala for what they have done, and of course I want to have a special word of thanks to David Kessler. I think it's had a bigger impact on the lives and health and the future of the American people than any person who ever held the job of FDA Commissioner before him, and I thank him very much. Because of David Kessler, we have been able to undertake this initiative to protect our young people from tobacco. Because of your actions over the last 6 years, more AIDS and cancer patients are getting better drugs faster as well. More people are getting better information on their food labels. Every American can go to bed knowing that the food on their tables, the medicines in their cabinets are safe. You've left us a great legacy. All Americans should be grateful to you, and we'll do our best to replace you. The Vice President and I would like to be invited to Yale from time to time to give a speech. Let me say that the reason we're all here today is to ensure that Anna and all the young people behind me and the young people all across America for whom they stand today have a chance to live out their dreams. They can only do that if they choose positive and healthy lifestyles and if we give them the support they need to make those choices. That's why the #1 goal of the drug strategy we announced earlier this week is to motivate our children to reject illegal drugs. Most of us have an instinctive urge to protect our young people from danger. We teach them to look both ways before crossing the street. We tell them not to touch a hot stove. We make sure they bundle up before going out in the cold. We should wrap that same protective arm around them when it comes to resisting smoking and the advertising and marketing of cigarettes. More Americans die every year from smoking-related diseases than from AIDS, car accidents, murders, suicides, and fires combined. Today it's estimated that 4.5 million of our children and adolescents smoke. Another 1 million use smokeless tobacco. The problem is getting worse. Smoking rates among 8th graders have risen 50% in the last 6 years. 1 out of every 3 young people who picks up this deadly habit will have their lives shortened from the terrible diseases caused by smoking. As parents, as leaders, as citizens, all of us have a moral obligation to do what we can to protect them. That's why last August the FDA took bold action to protect our children from the dangers of tobacco. We knew it would be a tough battle, but the health and well-being of our children are worth that. We set a goal of reducing tobacco use by children and adolescents by 50% over 7 years. To do that, we initiated the nation's first ever comprehensive effort to restrict access and limit the appeal of tobacco to children. Today's the first day that some of these rules take effect, quite appropriately on David Kessler's last day on the federal payroll. First, we're making the law of the land what is already the law in every state. No sale of tobacco products to anyone under age 18. Second, we're now requiring age verification by photo ID for anyone under the age of 27 before the purchase of tobacco products. From now on, in every store in America, our children will be told no ID, no sale. By requiring ID checks for people under 27, store clerks and managers will no longer have to guess the age of those seeking to buy cigarettes. Studies show that minors succeed in buying cigarettes over the counter nearly 70% of the time. That simply must stop. With these new requirements, we'll help to keep cigarettes out of reach for our young people while giving store clerks and managers a tool they need to make sure they're not inadvertently violating the law by selling to minors. Before we came out here, Secretary Shalala asked Anna if all of her efforts and all of these efforts were having any impact in reducing the tendency of her peers to smoke. And she said, yeah, a lot of them are quitting because it's too much hassle now. That's the idea. That's good. Over the last 3 weeks, we've conducted massive education campaigns to let retailers know how they can comply with these new rules. We've even prepared this new guide, a retailer's guide to the new federal regulations. Appealing advertising, multicolored. This has been made available to 500,000 retailers around the country. I want every retailer and every community across our nation to join with us in this important effort. Parents must continue to be the first line of defense, but all the rest of us have to make these rules work. And the retailers can play a major role. I honestly believe the overwhelming majority of them want to do so. And most of them are parents too. They have children too. We have a common interest in doing this job together, and we hope this guide will help them to achieve that goal. Cigarettes are still legal for adults. If they want to smoke, they can do so. But we have now, clear as a nation, drawn a line where our children are concerned. We have done it together. We are committed together. And now we must make it real together. Thank you very much.
Mr. President?
Nice friendly